What's going on? This is TJ Murphy, and welcome to another episode of Adventurous Entrepreneurs. My guests today are Robert and Kaylee Fukui, founders of Power Couples by Design and co-authors of the book Tandem. Together, they share their journey from corporate careers to working as a married couple in business, offering valuable insights on balancing marriage, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. Robert and Kaylee dive into the challenges and rewards of blending professional and personal lives, revealing the strategies for fostering work-life harmony, resolving conflicts, and building thriving marriages. They discuss the importances of finding success beyond just financial metrics, creating intentional time for connection, and leveraging each other's strengths to work as an effective team, both in business and in life. So tune in to learn how this dynamic power couple helps other married entrepreneurs overcome common struggles, design their lives intentionally, and achieve success both at home and in their businesses. Whether you're running a family business, navigating partnership dynamics, or simply seeking tips to strengthen your relationship, this episode is packed with the actionable advice and inspiring stories that you need to hear. Just a few of the golden takeaways Robert and Kaylee share in this episode are how they transition from corporate life into entrepreneurship, both working as, their own business owners, the most common challenges married entrepreneurs face and how to overcome them, practical strategies for achieving work-life harmony and building a thriving marriage while also building a thriving business, the importance of identifying and playing to each other's strengths in business and in life, and how to navigate conflict and maintain connection, even during the busiest of seasons. So, without further ado, this is me and Robert and Kaylee Fukui. Welcome to the Adventurous Entrepreneurs podcast. I'm your host, TJ Murphy. Since quitting my corporate 9-to-5 and starting a business while backpacking through Asia back in early 2017, I've had the privilege of learning from some incredibly adventurous entrepreneurs. Through these conversations and my own journey, I've learned that much like in life, entrepreneurship is an adventure. On this podcast, I explore the journeys of top-performing leaders in their fields. These wide-ranging conversations include tactical business advice, how I built this insights, lessons in leadership, life hacks, travel stories, favorite hobbies, and insights into living a purposeful and joy-filled life. Adventures await us, so let's dive in. Hey, Robert and Kaylee, welcome to Adventurous Entrepreneurs. How are you guys?
We
Doing
are
good.
Great in sunny California.
Yeah, apparently we're warmer than you are. So.
Very much so. Yeah, we were joking. It's probably 25 degrees here, and it's probably 75, 80 degrees where you are?
It's probably about almost pushing 70.
Yes.
Oh, that sounds really nice. That sounds really nice right now. Well, I want everyone to know all about you guys and kind of set the stage for this conversation. So let's get a little bit of background on the journey. Can you share the story of how you both started working together as a married couple in business? And was that always the plan, or did it kind of naturally evolve over time?
Definitely was never the plan, at least in my eyes.
I always saw him as being an entrepreneur when we were dating. And then first or second date, I always saw him as having his own business, but he thought I was crazy because I'm from a family of entrepreneurs, and he's like, no, that's the last thing I want to do.
Yeah, it's too risky. My dad was a pastor, and he just told me to, stay out of debt, go to school, get a good job. And so that's almost what I did. I came out of school with debt, but it wasn't because of the typical college debt, tuition, books, that kind of stuff. It was really, I just had too much fun. That's what it was.
You and me both, man.
And so sad to say, looking back, more as a little bit better financial steward these days, I look back, go, man, I waste a lot of money on nothing. I could have still had the same amount of fun, but now I have to spend go as far as debt. Yeah. But anyways, I went the corporate route. For me, I didn't like to take a lot of risks. So I went the corporate route. I graduated with a marketing degree. And so my first job out of college was actually with Coca-Cola, right when actually Powerade was launched. So that kind of dates me a little bit. And just stayed that route for about almost 25 years, and never thought about having a business. Even when Kaylee suggested it, as she said, I was like, nah, it's too risky. I like my paycheck, my bonus, my company car, all the benefits that come with it. But then something happened in my mid-40s or early mid-40s is when I actually started to explore the idea, because I was trying to think about, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? I think a lot of people, when they get in that 40s, they do start to kind of think about, okay, I'm at this kind of inflection point. It's kind of like your midway point almost in your career. And what do I really want to be doing? Is this the route I want to continue doing, or is it something else? And if it is something else, then this is the right time to pivot,
Yep.
And so anyways, I did explore the idea of having a business and didn't know what it would be. So I would just basically thought, I'll just consult on the side. I'll just do some marketing consulting, and maybe I'll find a business that I'll want to do. And so I looked at it as like a paid market research, essentially.
Yeah, it's a great way to go about
right?
it.
And then turns out I really like the consulting, and especially I just started really, instead of consulting with corporations like big companies, I really focused on like small, medium-sized companies, more family-owned business. Yep. And I really liked the connection with the owner, and also what I enjoyed wasn't just about the increasing sales, but it was really about the impact that it made on the owners and the team. You really get to know people, right, on an intimate level, much differently than a corporation. A corporation, they don't really have their skin in the game like a business owner does, right? And so it means there's a total different meaning to it. And so I really enjoyed that. So that's why I decided to kind of focus in on small, medium-sized business.
Well, you're speaking my language, because that is our clientele, and I love everything you described is really why I love working with local small businesses, because that connection and the impact, you get to see how that ripples not just in their lives, their business, but their team and the stability that creates, the opportunity that creates, whatever service they're providing in the community when they're doing well, that just ripples out to the whole community. It's a fun thing to be a part of.
Absolutely.
So
No,
Kaylee,
you're right. It's big in the community, because if you go by the baseball field, if you look on the back of the jerseys, it's not the big box people. It's all the small business that are sponsoring these teams. And it's like, we feel like we're the bread and the butter of our economy, Totally. And so yeah, we feel like we can make a difference. Mine was kind of like the people that we help. It's kind of like my childhood upbringing. I'm third generation entrepreneur, and so my dad worked a lot of hours. He worked 6 days a week. To this day, I don't know if he made it to my high school graduation. And it was really challenging, and it was hard on our family. We had there was 4 siblings, and so my mom raised 4 strong-willed children. God bless her. And I think my dad just wanted to get out of the house and get away from us all. And it was just hard, and we saw how it affected our family. And same with Robert. His dad was a pastor, and his dad's job, or priority, I guess I should say, was the church. And so that was always forefront. And so it was just hard when the family, the business becomes the mistress.
Yeah. And so I'm kind of sensing where this led, but what inspired you guys to ultimately create Power Couples by Design and focus on helping married entrepreneurs?
So as I was saying, I was focused on doing marketing consulting, and so they obviously hired for marketing help, marketing and sales help. And at first, I started doing that, but then as I started to look a little deeper into their financials and in operations and what they're doing as business owners on the day-to-day, I realized that they're working way too hard, harder than they needed to. From the corporate environment, everybody's got a place, and everybody has kind of a little bit more focus on the job they do, including the CEO and the president, right? And so the CEO isn't in the day-to-day. It's the team that's doing the day-to-day. The CEO is the visionary, leads a team, helps build teams and all that. But looking at the business owners, they were doing way too much, and they were also, they were operating on such low margins financially that it forced them, everything ultimately landed on them because they didn't have enough to hire additional help. So therefore, they make up for it by them doing the work. Yeah. And so they're working much harder than they needed to, and it was affecting home. And so what happened was, as you get to know your clients, they start talking about their personal life a little bit more. And then ultimately, the Kauffman Foundation estimates that 71% of business owners are married. And so ultimately, the marriage, the family, the home life kind of comes up. And so I would just organically coach them a little bit into conflict resolution issues at home and this and that thing. And then also a lot of the owners, their spouse was working the business too. So there's that dynamic. sometimes kids. And so what we noticed that the business, good and bad, was affecting home, good and bad, depending on how the business is doing and how much time and effort they're putting in the business. And so as Kaylee was sharing and my own upbringing, we're like, oh, we weren't unique in that we were experiencing the brunt of the business being front and center of their life. Or as we like to say, the business was the mistress, right?
Yeah.
And so after one client after another, the same situation coming up, that's when I looked at Kaylee, and this is when we truly decided to work together. It's like, hey, you know what? There's an issue here that I don't see really being addressed. That, I'm Googling and I'm like, I don't see any business consultant or coach or whatever that really addresses business and marriage issues, because you can't separate the two. Right? It's going to affect your life.
Unfortunately not.
Right? And so, but yet, what do we do when we're looking for help, professional help? We're either going to a marriage counselor or going to a business coach or consultant. And neither of those two can empathize with what's going on the other side.
Yeah.
And so what happens is we can get some marriage help, but when the business is still struggling, it's still a stressor, right? And if we get business help, that could be doing well. But if we don't know how to set boundaries between business and home, home's still going to suffer. And so we'd say, hey, we're kind of in a unique situation. We felt it. I understand what's going on business-wise. It's affecting home, but we also know what are some things and boundaries we can put in place at home that will prevent the business from overtaking their life. And so we just kind of tested out with a handful of entrepreneurs on this process, this basic, framework in a sense of how to have better work-life balance, how to win on both sides. Yeah. You can win in marriage and business at the same time, but it just takes different choices and a different mindset. Because the mindset right now for an entrepreneur is you put all your focus in the business, and once the business is financially sound enough, then we can have our life back, in a sense. But 20, 30 years later, business owners that are still, even if they're doing well financially, they still don't know how to turn it off in the business. Yeah. And so it's not a financial issue on the business side to have better work-life balance. It's a little bit more of a mindset and a way you adjust life together.
I love that. I mean, as you described, it is one of the most common challenges any entrepreneur faces, but especially when you both are in business together or separately. Like, how do you create that, what many would call work-life balance? But I always describe it as it's a blend, because a balance always kind of means one thing is either off versus the other. It's hard to get equilibrium. But when you do it in an intentional way and design your business life around the life that you want to live, you can really blend them together in a harmonious way. So I want to create a little bit of a relatable moment for people that are listening and they're like, yeah, I'm struggling with this. You guys work with a lot of married entrepreneurs. What's a common or the most common challenge that you see these couples facing when it comes to blending or balancing, however they like to describe it, their personal and professional lives?
Well, I think on the work side, we see a lot of the go-to in the entrepreneur world is just put more time in. More time. If we don't know what else to do, we just do more time. You know what I mean? But if we're not measuring any of that, and is it actually working? Are we being productive? And because if we just keep putting more time, but it's not working, and we're not measuring and keeping track of that, that's less time to have at home.
Yeah. We'd like to start out with defining what balance looks like in your life. So actually, when you look up the definition of balance, harmony, equilibrium, they're all synonymous. And so people think of balance as you're suggesting, like an equal weighting, like a quantitative measurement, but it's not. It's a qualitative measurement. It's the quality of time between business and home. So it's not about how much time. So first, we like to get our clients, and even for us, we had to do the same thing when we started the business. We were following the same trap, and so we had to define what does success look like to us, number one, because the way we define success is going to shift our focus to that area. So, we grew up from childhood, as success was defined on what we did and accomplished, whether it's your school, whether it's your sports. And then when you get a job, when you go to college, you get your degree, how many degrees, what degree, and then your career or in your business, right? It's always about stuff, external stuff. So when we look at defining success, it's like, first you got to say, okay, how are you taking care of yourself, both physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? How are you taking care of your relationships? And then how are you taking care of your business and your wealth? So start with the first two because that's the areas we neglect the most because we're so focused on the other two, right? So I said, what does success look like as far as you as a healthy person? And it's not just about how you work out and all that stuff, but just being healthy overall. And then how do you define success in your relationship, your marriage, your kids, and all that? How do you define success? And how are you going to achieve that? And what's the bare minimum thing you can do in each of those two areas, self and relationships, that no matter how busy business gets, that you always have that, you protect that time. So for example, Kaylee and I, first thing in the morning is our time. So I have my alone time to take care of myself, and I have my prayer moment, and then Kaylee and I, we have our prayer moment, and then we have our check-in, right? It doesn't take a lot of time. But first thing in the morning, right? And so that leaves the whole rest of the day to do business if that's what we're going to do, right? If we happen to have a busy schedule, right? Yeah. And so we don't want to keep going on too long, and that's all we get to do personally. But, you know, we all have busy stretches in our business. And so we just got to know that. But we got to say, what's the protected time we're going to have that no matter how busy things get externally, that we still have that'll still help our relationship stay intact and it can actually grow. Because it shows that, you know, psychological research shows that in a typical husband and wife relationship, we don't even spend 5 minutes of intentional time connected.
Present time. No phone,
we're
no
just
computer.
Running, right? We'll talk to each other, but we're just running, telling each other what to do, what to pick up at the grocery store, picking up the kids, right? It's all task oriented.
Yeah.
But we don't even have 5 minutes a day of just focused intentional time. So that just goes to show that it really doesn't take a lot of time to have greater work-life balance and still stay connected as husband and wife and with the kids.
And you have to admit, at least myself, I have a lot of time wasters. You know what I mean? It's like, so I know I can find 5 minutes somewhere. You know what I mean? I can put the phone down. I can, you know, there's a lot of things I can do to find that time. Because we hear people say, oh, I don't have time. I'm like, seriously? You don't have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is for your spouse, for your family? I'm like, wow.
And then with time wasters on a personal side, there's also time wasters in the business. So when we get into the 100%. Business part of things, you know, how do you create a successful business? Well, the first key is where's the owner spending their time? Yeah. That's the first thing we look at before we even do any kind of business planning or strategy is where are you spending your time and how productive are each of these areas? Is that where you should be spending your time?
Yeah, I think that's so important. You know, if something feels out of balance, it's definitely time to audit where all that time is going in your business, outside of your business. I love your guys' strategy for right out of the gate each day, prioritizing your marriage, your relationship, and having that 5 minutes. Like you said, it doesn't take a lot of time, but as long as it's intentional, it's that quality that ultimately is helping you guys to start the day on the right foot. Mm-hmm. And from the sounds of it, build a thriving marriage. So, I mean, that's great. I think that would work for a lot of people. Are there any other strategies that you guys have found for helping these power couples implement something that can start improving their work-life harmony and ultimately build that thriving marriage?
So I say this goes for the business and for the marriages. We have weekly meetings. Monday at 3:30, we get together, go to the coffee shop. We give each other an encouraging word because sometimes that's just a minute. We all like to, we all want to hear an encouraging word from our spouse. And totally. So we're intentional about that. We'll go over our calendars. We'll sync them up. So I know Robert did a lot of traveling lately, just got back from New York. So I know what the expectation is. He's going to be gone for 3 or 4 days. So then when he gets back, we'll put something on the calendar for us to go do something fun and reconnect. We also talk about our finances. We talk about like our vision. Are we on track? Because it's so easy to get off track, and it could be good things.
Yeah, totally.
So, like 6 months later down the year, you look back and think, oh my gosh, this is not where we said we wanted to be at the beginning of the year. So then you got to get back on track.
Course correct.
Yes. We talk about, is there anything that we need to talk about emotionally? Like, is there anything that needs to be resolved? Any issues?
The kind of conversations all husbands want to have.
Yeah, you're so excited about that, honey.
Hey, we may struggle with them, but they're so important to be able to sit down, and it gets more comfortable over time. What you're describing is something my wife and I have done probably for almost like 6 years now. Not consistently straight through. We've come in seasons, and we're actually out of one right now, and I just last week said we need to start our weekly huddle back up like you're describing. Usually for us, it was Sunday mornings, starting the day with a cup of coffee, having some intentional time to just talk about what's going on in life, look at our vision for the year, how are we doing, but then pull out our calendars. Okay, what's coming up this week? Do we have any conflicts? We're a one-car household, and we've been that way for a long time, intentionally just to save money, help the planet a little bit. And we live in a town where you don't really need two cars, but there's times where there's a conflict. So we got to look at, all right, I'm running out here. You need the car then. Let's figure out how to make that work. And like you said, looking at finances, just making sure we're aligned on where things are headed and how that week's going to look. It's such an important thing. And when we do that consistently, we find we're just more in sync and we ultimately have great weeks and are thriving more.
Yeah, you're just more connected.
And I'm less likely to get triggered because I know what the expectations are. Like, oh, he's going to be traveling. So, okay, we'll get something on the calendar, as opposed to me saying, what? You're always traveling. You didn't tell me.
Yeah, no surprises when you sit down and talk about it.
Yeah. And on the business side, it's going back to what I was talking about, how the business owner a lot of times is focused on the wrong things.
Yep.
And that's what's forcing him to just keep working more and more and more because you're just trying to do everything, right?
Yeah.
And so we have, and it's in our book Tandem too, but we look at how do we increase the margin of time and money in the business. So when you look at time, let's start with the owner and even the team, but let's start with the owner. And it's, what do you just do a basic big audit of where you spend your time. You just list it, itemize it, right?
Yeah.
And then you identify what are the top 2 or 3 things that are kind of more in your zone of genius. If you've read the Gay Hendricks book, things that you're great at, but it also gives you life, right? We spend, according to with the book and even some other performance research, it shows that we, as business owners, we only spend about 35% of our time in that zone of genius, and 65 to 70% of the time in all the other stuff, which is the busy work.
Yep.
And so if we flip-flop the ratio, then you would see the growth of your business, because those areas that are in your zone of genius are typically only things that the owner is best qualified to do anyway.
Yep.
And they're usually more productive, long-term things that will lead to growth in the business.
Yeah. Higher value, higher revenue generating
It's not
activities.
the day-to-day operational issues that need to get done, but not by the business owner. The business owner is supposed to be leading the business forward, right? And so what we do is, okay, so where you're spending 65% of your time, how can you automate, delegate, or eliminate these areas? So automation, obviously, there's all kinds of software tools and AI and all kinds of things that could automate some of the things that will at least streamline and make things faster. And then delegation, of course, that's obvious, is that what are tasks that you can delegate either to your team or even outsource to a virtual assistant or some kind of virtual employee. And then eliminate what are the things you need to say no to, at least temporarily or forever. Mm-hmm. Because as business, and this applies even to home life too, is like as time goes on, we tend to take on more and more things on our plate.
Especially the older you get.
And we don't stop to think about, okay, do we continue to do everything, or what's got to come off?
Is this still serving my goals?
Mm-hmm.
Is this in alignment with where I want to be spending my time?
So inevitably, we're just carrying this. The baggage just gets weightier and weightier, and that's where life gets out of balance and out of sync, because now we're just trying to juggle everything, when we probably shouldn't be. We don't need to juggle everything. There's a lot of things that just need to come off, right?
Yeah. Saying no to more things creates more space for the things that you really will want to say yes to when they come around.
Yeah, so even just like at the end of the year, we're in that mode.
We were just talking about that.
We're in that mode, right? As we're preparing for the following year, it's like, okay, what do we keep doing? What do we not?
What's
so we
working?
just got to audit.
Start, stop, continue.
Exactly.
I like to audit everything I do in that way. And the more stops I have in there, the more... the better I feel. Ultimately, it just creates more space, and ultimately, you think some things are important, but as time goes on, they may not be serving you in the same way. So it's good to look at those things and not just keep them in perpetual motion.
Exactly.
Or maybe the timing isn't right anymore. You know what I mean? It's like it could be things that you love. I mean, when we were doing our book tour, we drove around the country, and there was a lot of things we had to say no to because we never get to each destination and give an excellent job if we didn't say no, because there was no way we could do it all, especially from the car.
Totally. Different seasons are going to call for different things that you need to prioritize and say yes and no to. So,
Absolutely.
I'm glad you mentioned your book, Tandem. I know I was doing some research before we met, and in the book you guys talk about balancing responsibilities in business, yes, but also in your marriage. And I'm curious for you guys working with couples, how have you found couples can effectively divide roles and play to each other's strengths without creating friction in the marriage?
Oh, well, we did this one the hard way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One day Robert's like, oh, honey, do you want to do the bookkeeping? And I'm thinking, he's like, because, we need someone to do it. And I thought, well, okay, I can do this. And he needs help. I'll do it. And so then and Robert's the numbers guy. So then he would come back to me. He's like, honey, did you get in and do the bookkeeping? I'm like, no. And then he's like, I really need you to do it. So then I would go in and do it. And he'd come back, honey, because I'm very creative, colorful. He's like, honey, this really needs to be precise. And then I would get upset. I'd get triggered because I'm like, but I'm trying. I'm doing it my best. And then he's like, but it's got to be right. And then he would trigger, and it was a big vicious circle.
So you got to have an honest evaluation of what each other's strengths are, right? So if you do,
Totally.
and then
We can laugh about it now.
Chapter 3 in the
Well, that's
book.
good. That's healthy.
Yeah, we mentioned chapter 3 in the book. We'd like to do assessments. And one of them we use DISC, and that just helps understand how you communicate as well as like how you operate. And so when you understand each other's strengths and work with it, know how to work with it, then you know what are the best roles. And so what's interesting, in the DISC, I'm a CS, so C's are very analytical and detailed oriented. And then she's more of an I, which is more the charismatic, storyteller, flamboyant one. And so when you look at that, right, who should be doing QuickBooks?
Robert. Ding, ding,
Yeah,
ding.
really, honey.
Yeah.
I should be the one doing it, but I didn't want to do it because it's too tedious at work.
Yeah.
And so, then I put it on her, and then of course we get upset and things don't work out well. So you got to take an honest assessment. Okay, I really should be doing this. But if both of us don't want to do it, then hey, let's just spend the money and pay somebody to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. That's,
Right?
that's
It's
the best use of money, right? Do the things
Right?
that neither of you want or
Right.
are
it's
good
an
at doing.
assessment, right? You gotta spend your money well. It's an investment. It's an investment. We're getting our time back, and
Totally.
so both of us don't have to do something we don't want to do, and it's better for the relationship. So being able to play with each other's strengths, and also don't allow it to be a source of conflict, because as we're saying, I'm the analytical, detailed one, and she's not. That can create conflict when we're having conversations.
It used to drive me nuts. I'm like, oh my gosh, why does it have to be perfect all the time? But now I've grown to enjoy it, because if I need something that needs to be really detailed, I'm like, honey, can you help me with this?
Help me out.
Yeah.
Hey, hon.
Yeah, and you got to be able to be willing to allow them to work in their sweet spot. I think we've seen, it happened with us too, but also with teams, that a lot of times the business owner, because usually if they're husband and wife teams, one's on paper at least is the CEO, right? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times you'll see the business owner overstepping their bounds onto what their spouse is doing, even though she's the one that's most qualified or he's the one most qualified to do that area. But yet for whatever reason we start to micromanage and we overstep our bounds, and that creates conflict. And so you have to be able to respect each other's roles. You know their gifts, their strengths. If they're operating in their strengths, then you got to respect that. Can we have conversation? Do we have disagreements? Sure. But at the end of the day, you need to defer to the person who's most qualified in that role. Because if not, then again, as a business owner, you're just too involved with everything, and it's not going to go well.
Oh my gosh, that reminds me of a story. It was a husband and wife. He gave his wife a bad performance appraisal.
Oh, no.
Oh my gosh, are you serious? And she's like, yeah. And I said to him, how did that go over in the bedroom? I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did that.
Yeah,
Yikes.
I was just with him over the weekend, actually.
He's still alive too. I can't.
Yeah,
believe
he
it.
survived, it sounds like. That's good at least.
There's so many stories with this guy, and he cracks me up. But I'm like, you're one of those guys. You generally stay up at night to see how you can screw with your wife.
Oh, man. That's
But
hilarious.
anyways, really identifying your strengths and your roles, and really respecting each other, whether it's home or business. You got to respect what role they're in, because at the end of the day, they're the best at it anyway. And so being able, then the second stage is being able to have these disagreements and be able to resolve these issues in a healthy way, where you're not just wounding each other, but you're doing it in a way that you can resolve the issue, come to agreement, and then move forward. And that's a skill too that you got to learn.
I want to dive into that, especially. I'm glad we came to this topic of conflict, and you're so right. I mean, the best way to avoid conflict is to get clear on where the strengths and weaknesses lie, understand who should be the one to own certain areas of the business or certain areas of home life, and respect that. Once you do have clarity around who is the best person to be doing it, let them stay in their lane of genius, and you stay over on your end, and don't power trip in that way. But still, inevitably, conflict is going to arise. Things happen. There's going to be some tensions at times. So how do you guys either personally handle conflicts when they come up, or how do you help your clients work through conflicts in both marriage and business? And maybe you do have a personal example or a story where a disagreement ultimately came out well and turned into an opportunity or a growth moment.
Well, I say if it's a small one, that's something that can wait, then we'll talk about it at our meetings. But otherwise, if it's something bigger, like I've been known to, and this is not what to do. Robert's in here writing content, and I'll come in, honey, I need to talk to you. And he's totally, his mind is somewhere else. You know what I mean?
He's in the zone.
Yeah. And then I say something.
I was in a zone anyway.
Yeah, he was.
Not anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I say something, and he's like, what? And then, that can turn into a conflict. And it was because I didn't ask him, is now a good time? And if not now, when would be a good time? So that I didn't catch him off guard. And another way we resolve, I'm trying to think of a story, is that this comes from childhood, and it's called family of origin. And in my family growing up, we didn't do conflict well. We would walk out at each other, get in the car, hang up the phone. And so when we were first married and Mark would be upset, I would think, oh my gosh, is he going to walk out on me and leave me and not come back? Like, that would really cause a lot of anxiety in me. And we did premarital counseling for a couple years before we got married. And we came up with the strategy, and this is how we help our clients as well. It's different for every couple, but if Robert and I are in a heated discussion, and he'll just say to me, if he needs a break, he'll say, honey, I love you. I need a break. I need to go on a walk, and I'll be back at such and such time. And that he'll honor that and come back. And then that just kind of like calms me down, like, okay, I know everything's going to be all right now. And that also, I know we're going to pick up the conversation at that point that we had agreed on.
So she's talking about what we call rules of engagement. That's kind of in chapter 4 of the book Tandem. And it's just a way of how do you deal with issues, right? So what's kind of allowed and not allowed. So what we call what's in bounds and what's out of bounds. So the out of bounds things are like, if I do need a timeout, I don't just storm out. That's out of bounds. But what I can do is ask, hey, give me 30 minutes. Let me take a walk. I'll cool off and I'll come back. We'll pick it up. Yeah. And so we just don't know how to deal with issues. And if you need to cool off, how do you deal with that? But how do we communicate that to make sure we keep the line of communication open? And one of the things too, that I remember Kaylee did so well. I don't know how intentional she was about this, but one of the things is we don't like to use the word compromise. I mean, I looked at the definition of this word compromise, and it's actually tearing away the best of both parts and just coming into the middle. So what you're doing is ultimately you're coming to a solution that's not the best. And so because we're trying to keep what we're trying to do is keep parts of my idea and her idea. How do we blend it together? What we do is look like what's the best idea for us? Just what's the best for us? Yeah. Not about how do we take best parts of each one. Because sometimes when we come to a solution, sometimes it is a little bit of parts of ours. But a lot of times the solution is a little bit quite differently from either of ours. It might have pieces of it, but ultimately it morphs into something that's quite unique to what either one of us actually started with. So what we do is we have a conversation and brainstorm what is the best solution for us. And so that us terminology came when I remember we were in a discussion about a financial decision we had to make. And I did I think it was a real estate transaction, and I did all the research and all that. Yeah, I'm the analytical one, right? So I did all the research. And
crunch
all that.
the numbers.
Yeah, crunch numbers. And I said, hey, this is a great decision. This is a great investment. And then her coming from the feeling side, the creative side, she says, I don't have a good feeling about this.
And I can't prove it because I don't have numbers.
Yeah, there's no data to back it up. I know in my gut that's not.
So of course I said, well, you don't have anything to back it up. We're going this way. And so, anyways, I remember we were going round and round. And I was sticking to my guns, and she said her piece, like she said, and then she said, I know you'll make the best decision for us. And then she walked away. And the moment she said the word us, the word us just kind of rang in my head. It was like banging around in there. And the moment she said that, I was like, well, it's not about me. This affects both of us. And so basically, this is what I'm thinking, but this is actually what I had to do, was kind of lay down my ego and start to really have to think about this. And so I started looking at it from her angle as well as my angle. And so for a week straight, I was like, it was going through my mind. I was kind of looking at things from all different angles. Ultimately, I came back to her and I said, yeah, you're right. And so this is how we're going to do it. And so it was really about laying down, because when we get in a conflict, there's an ego.
You want to stand your ground.
It's a power struggle, right?
Totally.
And then ultimately,
and we're not listening.
If I stand my ground and override her, and she would kind of acquiesce, is that really the best decision for us? Just because she said okay, just because she gave in. I go, is that really the best thing? And so I had to like lay down my ego and then think, okay, what is the best decision for us? And then that totally changed my perspective on the issue and even our conflict. And then it didn't become a conflict anymore.
Yeah, that's such a powerful reframe, bringing in the us into the equation. Because as you were saying, Keely, when we are in a state of conflict, we're just kind of waiting to like say our piece again and waiting for that moment where we can, nope, this is why I'm right and you're wrong. But to be able to reframe in that way, and there's lots of ways you could do it, but getting to that place of us, what is the best decision for us? How are we going to move forward?
Yeah, because I'm not thinking clearly. I just want to win. And I'm like, in my mind thinking, how am I going to respond back to him? I'm not thinking, like, is this a good idea anymore? Or
no, we're just waiting for our moment of triumph.
Yeah. Just like even, people say, I'll pick my battles. That's also a bad one. I was like, well, that's just terrible. It's like we all have to, no matter what the situation, little or small, we both have to be able to share our perspective. Mm-hmm. And then going back to, knowing each other's strengths. Her perspective of her feeling of things, most of the time they've been right.
What?
You heard it here first. No, she's and then a lot of times my analysis have been right, but it hasn't been 100%. But ultimately, sometimes we gotta listen to each other, because one is it's just looking at things from a different perspective, and it's just like you got to be able to see things in 360, right? But no matter who we are, we all have blind spots, right? Mm-hmm. And we all see things with a certain lens, but we don't see things fully. And so that's why listening to somebody like your spouse that wants the best for you, because obviously I don't want her to fail. She doesn't want me to fail. Yeah. Right? Otherwise, we both go down.
You win together, you lose together.
Exactly.
Same team.
And so you got to, we got to lay down the ego and just be able to listen to our spouse's perspective and opinions and say, okay, let's weigh this and let's look at this truly, holistically, and then let's come to a decision.
I think that's so powerful because, as you said, when you understand where your strengths and weaknesses lie, where your spouse's strengths and weaknesses lie, you have defined rules of engagement for when conflict does come up, you're really creating this powerful setup where, as you said, Robert, you don't have 100% batting average. Your track record isn't 100%. So it's great to be able to have that emotional, intellectual side from Kaylee to balance the data with, something just doesn't feel right here. Let's look at it from a different angle, because at the end of the day, we're on the same team and we want to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially like with people, like, her discernment of people is better than mine, because I'll look at the data, the analysis. Oh, he looks good on paper, and this might be a good partnership or whatever, and then it blows up, right? And then she's had, this has happened before. She didn't have a good feeling about a partnership or an arrangement. And I was like, oh, no, he's great. Da, 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 and
Yeah.
blows up, right?
Sure enough.
And so, so this is kind of earlier on in our relationship. So, so I've learned over the years of like, I need to listen to her feelings.
Yeah. Sometimes the gut instinct is a powerful tool.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. So a little bit of a shift here as we move to wrap up. There's a fun question I always like to ask. It's travel related. So
Right.
I call this the choose your own adventure question. You can pick which one you'd like to answer or both if you just so desire. But the first would be, what's just like a favorite place that you love to visit time and time again? Just, it never gets old. Somewhere you love to go back to. Or second, just like a recent adventure that you guys have gone on. And in either case, what made it so memorable? Maybe a favorite moment, meal or drink you had, a lesson learned, friends that you made. Give us a story.
You want to go or you
I'll
want to
go.
tell me first? Okay.
Okay, so I have a couple things. I love the water, so the beach is like my happy place, and so we
Yeah.
go to Seal Beach whenever we can, and make a picnic and just go hang out and have fun. We just got back too from Hawaii, and so Robert was born on the Big Island, so he's got family there. We went to Maui, and then we went to Oahu, which he has family there.
Nice.
And fun story is that I met some of his family that I don't know if you've ever met before.
A couple of them I was too young to remember, so it's almost like it's basically a first meeting. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was so exciting. And then your cousin, I don't know if you'd met him before, Dean. But so it was fun meeting his family and
Yeah.
just being included. And it was just
The Ohana grew.
yes,
a little bit.
that's what I was trying to come up with.
yeah,
And then we had, oh my gosh, so much good food.
Oh my God, I love it. Yeah, I've been to Hawaii a few times. Maui, Kauai, Big Island. I just love the food.
Oh, we found some great matasadas and
Yeah.
Yeah.
long johns.
So yeah, Hawaii can't go wrong with that, and it always feels like home when we go back. But we love to travel in general, and so we like traveling to a lot of different new places. So we don't tend to go back to the same place, but Hawaii is definitely one of those that we do go back multiple times, just for a number of reasons, as we talked about. But one thing I love to do is ski. And so
Me too. That's why I live where I live.
yeah, it doesn't have to be the same place,
Yeah.
but we love just to ski every year. We'll go on this trip.
Yep.
Although there's certain ones that are favorites. I've always loved Squaw Valley,
Oh,
in
yeah.
Tahoe. Growing up in the Bay Area, that's one of the areas we'd go. But a recent trip we just went earlier this year, the last ski season, went to Whistler for the first time.
Nice.
So
That's beautiful.
that was amazing.
Yeah, Whistler's on my list. I live here in beautiful Bend, Oregon. Mount Bachelor is 25 minutes from my doorstep and a great mountain to ride, but like to take at least one ski trip every year, usually with some of my guy friends. And
Yeah.
Colorado, down in Tahoe,
Oh, you gotta go.
going up to Canada. Yeah, so many great places to see.
Yeah, Whistler was great. It was all that it was advertised.
Yeah, I bet. No, I've never heard bad things. So great stories, guys. Well, before we wrap things up, do you have any ask, challenge, or just parting words of wisdom, advice you want to share with people listening in?
Challenge advice.
I'd say, you know what, with your spouse, give them the benefit of the doubt. Think that they have your best interest and they have your back, because it's so easy to just go into that negative place. But you know what? A lot of times, even with miscommunications, like I think Robert said something, and then if I don't check in, I get upset because I thought, oh my gosh, he said that. But the times I do check in to clarify what he said, it's different than what I heard.
Totally.
And so that just saves an argument right there.
Yeah. Check in your ego. Always assume positive intent from your partner. Like that same team mentality is so powerful.
So this might be a challenge, I guess, but always challenge yourself to do better in whatever that is. So in yourself, your person, as a person, your relationships, and in your business, and in your wealth. So it's always about how to do it better, not just how to do it more. Like in business, it's not about how to do more into it, right? It's how to do it better. If you want more time back, how do we do it? How do we do better? Challenge yourself to do it better and then have a better life overall. So look at all those areas in your life and say, how do I do this better? And be honest, because especially when it comes to a relationship, ultimately, if you're asking your spouse, they're going to say, hey, we could do this better. And they might talk about hitting your ego. we don't want to hear we're being a lousy husband or wife, right? But we got to listen to that and then challenge ourselves to say, okay, how do I do this better? Because there's always a solution.
Good.
There is. Well, Robert and Kaylee, thank you. This has been a really refreshing conversation for me personally. So I know when I feel that, there's a lot of value for everyone else listening in as well. So if anyone wants to reach out to you guys, learn more about what you're doing, where's the best place to find and support you online, get connected, website, socials, things like that?
marriedentrepreneur.co/adventures.
Adventurous.
Sorry, adventurous.
Oh,
So
is that a unique
it's
link
Yes.
for this
It's
podcast?
a unique URL just for the audience.
Awesome.
So
Cool.
in it, there's a free work-life balance guide. So that's a great way to kind of kick the tires and get to know us a little bit more. And there's also some other information about us on there. But that's a great place to start because it'll take you to a landing page and has everything about us.
Well, we'll put that in the show notes, so make it even easier for everyone to find you guys. And I'll have my team pull all the links to your socials and all that stuff as well. So appreciate you guys taking the time today to come in here and just talk about how we can be not just better in business, but better husbands, better wives, better teams. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about doing more in business, it's about doing more together in life.
Excellent.
Building that thriving life together. So appreciate you guys.
Thanks,
TJ. Thanks for having us on. Awesome.
To all of our adventurous listeners, thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Please be sure to subscribe, download, and share this on social media or with someone you know will get some value from it. Leaving a review goes a long way in helping people find the show, and I personally appreciate reading them when they come in. So please go drop one if you have the time. We'll see you all next week, and remember, whether we're talking about business or the things that bring us joy outside of work, life is meant for exploring. So go out there and live it one adventure at a time.